Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the station. So, you're going to notice a change today in the way that the format is, in that we won't have Lucy joining us today. She had some things that she had to attend to personally. And it kind of felt like I was tapped on the shoulder by the rest of me, quote unquote, and saying that let's take the opportunity to share something in a way that is a little bit different than if we were doing it collaboratively. Excuse me. And by that, I mean if we had Lucy here as well. And so, one of the things that I'd like to do with you guys is to kind of give you an idea about the name that I use for the information that shows up. And so, when I was thinking about a name that I could utilize for this particular phenomenon, for the channeling that I do, I wondered if maybe a name would be provided for me by my higher self or by some of those other aspects that I'm associated with. But the concept was to choose a name yourself. And so I went through a process of exploration. Um, and it had to do with some energy that I've been associated with for a long time now, as well as a recommendation of a good friend of mine who's a longtime explorer that led to the name Dsetu that's used presently. And I had an interesting metaphor for how I experience the energies of the various aspects of consciousness that are associated with this particular connection that I experience. And that metaphor is, if you can imagine a very large glass of water, or maybe even we could say maybe a small aquarium, right? Nothing in it but the water. And then what you do is you take a few colors of food coloring. Let's say you have some yellow and you drop a few drops of yellow in. You have some green, you drop a few drops of green in. You have some red and you drop a few drops of red in. You'll notice that there are places where it's the water that you're recognizing, no color. And then there are places where you're recognizing the red in the water, the green in the water, or the blue in the water. And then there are places where it seems like those colors are mingling together and they're forming a different shade, a different tone of themselves. And so this is a way that I enjoy expressing how I experience this connectivity that I have. There are a number of, maybe I'll call them in the moment, aspects of the all of consciousness, aspects of all that is, that express themselves. And some of these have had or are associated with certain, what I guess we'll call in the moment, time periods on the planet Earth. And were represented at those times as with certain names, as certain beings or ideas, maybe we can say. Others have not been. And so the water, the clear water, would be a representation of my own soul, me, my higher self, my higher mind, however way you would want to say that. And then there have been some mixes in this as I was early in the process. And one of those was an energy, a consciousness that is of another dimension that certain individuals will know of and goes by the name anima, associated with a particular culture, particular people that express themselves in a dimension that's different than ours. The name of their people is termed Sasani. So I had this individual as part of the process for me for a relatively short time in the course of what I've done this, probably 3 months. And there was a particular feeling to that energy, particular actions that were going on. Maybe I'll call it behind the scenes while that was happening. And then I've always, well, not always, I've for quite a long time now been quite connected with the, maybe I'll call it the layer of consciousness, the actions of consciousness within a dimension that is associated with that representation that we've expressed here on the planet that we call dragons. So I have a very strong connection to that energy, to that consciousness, and what it expresses for us. I also have a strong connection to a particular focus, a particular aspect of one of the further back layers of my oversoul. And you may understand the oversoul as being that action of consciousness that expresses itself as many, maybe we'll call them in the moment, focused personalities, right? Many sort of ego type expressions, right? So the first layer of that would be the immediate oversoul. And then there's an oversoul to that oversoul that many oversouls inhabit, and then oversoul to those oversouls. And it just keeps going, of course. There's really no end to that. And so for me, there is a particular expression of consciousness that's associated with the oversoul that I'm associated with, that's a number of layers in, that expresses itself and fills, I guess we'll call it, within the idea of our galaxy, expresses itself in a galactic form in that regard. And the terminology that is used for that particular being is called Anuhet. And that particular being also is associated with this other expression that expressed itself within terms of history on our planet, in the area on the planet that we know as Egypt, as Amun Ra. And there are some others that move in and out on occasion, but those tend to be the primary energies that I will feel and that come forward at various times. Typically, for me, the way that it works is that those other aspects of consciousness are in connection with my higher self, with my soul, and that energy is conveyed to me through that interface, through that more expansive me. And of course, all of those aspects of consciousness are more expansive aspects of me, I guess we could say, in this moment. And so that's when we utilize the term Dsetu, that's what we're speaking of. We're speaking of that grouping, which does have some flexibility of aspects of consciousness that are usually associated with the information that we're sharing. And so in that regard, today, what we want to talk a little bit about is the energy and maybe the tone of the dimension of individuals that express themselves as dragons on our planet. I'm going to do a little of that, or that's the information that I get that will be expressed, as well as a particular way of framing our experience here, and we will get to that once we get into it. So I'm going to take a little time, a few moments, to shift my perspective, and then Dsetu will share what it is that they would like to share with all of you. So once again, we would like to greet all of you and express, as we always do, our deep appreciation of our ability to connect with all of you in this way. It adds so very much to our experience as one of those aspects of consciousness that, like you, is perpetually exploring all of consciousness. So as was mentioned, what we would like to do today is to give you some idea of some of the energies that we represent. In particular, those energies that you have portrayed on your planet as the beings that you know as dragons. So Let's look first at the symbology that you have all utilized on your planet with that representation. Typically, especially, I guess what we'll call historically, when you have imagined these individuals, these beings, these creatures on your planet, you have provided them with certain attributes. One of those is a being of immense power, right? These expressions, these dragons on your planet, are always known to express themselves very powerfully. They have no fear of anything else around them, right? They move in the way that they choose to move. They go to the places that they choose to go. They frequently can fly to those places, right? There is really nothing on the face of the planet that can hinder their process. Typically, they will exude fire from their being, many times from their mouth. Of course, within the exploration of consciousness, within spirit, within the idea of maybe what you might call metaphysics, there are symbologies, ideas that are given to particular expressions that you utilize within your reality. Fire is one of those. One of the perhaps strongest symbolisms that's given to fire is something that transforms things. And so our energy is strongly about that as well. There is one other quality that frequently you will give to these beings, although it is not always applied, and that is of a great deal of wisdom. These beings on your planet are usually known to be very long lived. They will live many, many, many years. And in that large expanse of their life, they have gathered quite a bit of wisdom, and they have wisdom of their own, and they will share that wisdom frequently with individuals who interact with them in different ways than many may. Now, when we talk of our interactions with all of you, what we tend to do with those attributes that are so very natural for us to rest in, things and attributes that we understand deeply about ourselves, is to bring that reminder to all of you of the depth of your power, of the unlimited ability that you have in that regard, of the transformations that you're going through, especially in this time period, but also of your ability to transform, that it's a natural part of your beingness to transform. And that within you lies infinite wisdom. You have a great degree of wisdom. All of the understanding, all the knowledge that lies within all of what you are, which really you cannot put a border around, is really yours to access and to utilize. Another action, perhaps we'll call it, that this collective energy has as we interact with all of you is to act as a type of bridge to create a connection, shall we say, with that symbology of a bridge to information that perhaps you may consider is shared by other aspects of consciousness, but maybe even more importantly, to make you aware of the bridges that lie within yourself, the connections you have to the information that is a part of who and what you actually are. These are the things that, as we enter into associations with individuals in various dimensions, we bring to the experience that you're having. Now, of course, what we do is we offer that information, we offer that energy, we offer that awareness. It is up to each individual, as is always true, as to how much of that they will embrace as part of their experience within their reality. So, in this, one of the reasons that in this time period that you're all going through right now, this is quite important, is that you're in the midst of doing something very powerful for yourself. And what you're doing is you're, as a metaphor perhaps, you're rewriting the story of your life, right? You had this, perhaps you could say you had this book in front of you and it had a certain number of chapters in it. And those chapters expanded and became the things that they did. And they led into other chapters. And there were particular ideas, there were particular beliefs, there were particular definitions, particular expectations, particular approaches to an existence that was expressed in that particular story. But what you're doing now is you're allowing yourself to rewrite those chapters, to develop a different story for yourself. And this is a nice way to look at things also, because the malleability and the flexibility of your existence here in this experience that seems so very solid to all of you is really quite flexible. It is quite malleable. And so really taking the advantage that it is, in fact, a story that you're creating for yourself allows you a little more flexibility, shall we say. There are some friends of ours that express ideas of individuals that help in this regard. One of the things that they express is the idea of what if? What if I did it this way instead? What if I thought of it like this instead? What if I translated it in this way? This can give you some flexibility in changing the story that you're writing for yourself. We had a good friend of ours, and when we say ours, we're talking about the focus personality of Chuck, that is continuing their existence now or is re-familiar with the rest of who they are because they no longer involve themselves on this physical dimension plane any longer. And this individual used to express it, wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if I chose to do it this way instead? Wouldn't it be nice if I chose to look at it in this way instead? Wouldn't it be nice if I chose to perceive it this way instead? Again, just another way of allowing yourself to understand that the experience you have is a very flexible experience. It's a very malleable experience. It is, in fact, a story. And this you that's focused within the experience in collaboration with those more, maybe we'll say, encompassing aspects of you, collaboratively are creating this experience, right, for this aspect of you. So at this point, maybe we'll talk a little bit about what all of you term the ego. And as you have a tendency to do with many things, you've complicated the concept of the ego as well in your experience. And it really is quite simple. You actually know it quite well. It's not such a mysterious thing. When you think about, in a natural way, without pulling in, without attempting to color your definition of yourself with maybe metaphysical terms, but when you think of who you are, you think of your name. For the focused personality that you're seeing right now, that could be Chuck. It may be John. It may be Bob. It may be Tim. It may be Lucas. It may be many, many, many different names. Same thing with the individuals who consider themselves of other persuasions. It may be Lucy. It may be Sally. It may be Sarah. It may be many, many names, right? So you think of yourself as the name, right? As that personality. As you do that, what's automatically woven into that is all of the experiences that you've had, all of the events that have made up your life, all the circumstances and the situations that you've been in, all of the individuals that you have been associated with throughout your life. Some of those individuals have played larger parts than others, right? There are many, many things that have gone on, quote unquote, historically for you that come to mind when you think of who and what you are, right? So you may understand that the ego, as far as its mechanism is concerned, is kind of meant as the lens, maybe we can say, the interpretation device that you utilize to have the physical experience. It enables you, that particular expression of consciousness, to have the experience, for the experience to seem real for you, right? And for all the things that you wanted to play out within this physical dimension to be played out. And so the ego is actually your personality, what you consider to be your personality, right? The you that you consider to be you as the human you, right? And all the things that are associated with that. That is your ego. That is the interface that you've had between the spiritual you and the physical you, is that, right? You've had all of those experiences. You consider those experiences to be you. Now, of course, in your exploration of what the rest of you is all about, what you're doing is you're putting that into context. You're understanding, yes, I've had these experiences, but what you're beginning to understand about yourself is that you are not actually your experiences. Your experiences are intimately associated with you, but you are always, again, to borrow a phrase that another great friend of ours uses, you are always more than the sum of your parts. And so you are more than your feeling states. You are more than your emotions. You are more than all the experiences that you've had. You are more than your beliefs. You are more than all of those things. You are, in fact, that creates and expresses all those things, right? So there are times that you may have practiced with that, where you may take the what's termed the observer position and observe what it is that you're expressing in any particular moment. That gives you the opportunity to understand that there are various layers of who and what you are. So to go back to the concept of you as a story once again, and in this, you may be familiar with the concept of people will saying that there's a particular journey that you're on as you're exploring who you are. There's a path that you're on as you're exploring who and what you are. But there's also the idea, and we would say maybe a step deeper into the knowledge of who and what you are, that you're not necessarily on a journey and you're not necessarily on a path, but in fact, you are the journey and you are the path, right? Because your experiences flow through you, right? There is no experience without you. You are the one that creates the experience, and you express it in all the ways that you express it. Maybe we'll just say simply around yourself in any particular moment, but it's expressed through you, right? You're the one that experiences that. And as you create all the various props on the stage, perhaps we can say, and that's everything that you experience in your reality. As you're creating all of that, it is in fact flowing from you, right? You're experiencing configurations of your consciousness, of your energy. So in that regard, you're not on a journey, you are the journey, right? You create the events and circumstances for yourself to then experience. So it's a very powerful way to look at what it is that you're doing, to understand that really you're the one that gets to determine how you define all the things that show up in your reality, right? You are the one that attaches the meaning that that thing has in your life. You're the one that gives it meaning. And because you provide it with a particular meaning, it then brings about particular types of experiences in your experience of physical reality. Now, many times, of course, this happens very quickly. It may not be at all that something shows up and then you think to yourself, well, what kind of a meaning do I want to apply to this thing? This, of course, is what your beliefs are about. Your beliefs flow very quickly and very effortlessly and many, many times in an unnoticed way through your experience of your reality. The idea of mindfulness is to become more familiar with that flow, to be able to follow that flow, to be able to know in each moment which beliefs you're utilizing, to then build your experience of your physical reality around you, to then have that experience. And so these are very important things to recognize about yourself, that you express your experience, you express your journey, you express your exploration of yourself within this particular dimension in particular ways. And by becoming increasingly familiar with that, by understanding that there are mechanisms of the way that consciousness expresses itself within this particular physical dimension that are a part of the way that you utilize things to express this dimension. And so if you become familiar with those, then you can steer your experience, perhaps we'll say, in a way that more typically feels more satisfying for you, more fulfilling for you. But what that takes, of course, is knowing yourself in a wider way, in a deeper way, all the time, to continue that exploration of who and what you are. And so we think that today we're going to make that it. And of course, because we don't have Lucy with us today, we don't have that perspective that all of you may have and questions that may come from that perspective. So we'll leave you with that. And as always, we hope that you're enjoying your exploration and you are enjoying the ride, maybe we'll say, the journey that you've gone on. There was a short metaphor, perhaps we might call it, that again, we enjoyed when we heard it. And an individual asked another aspect of consciousness that also shares information on your planet, we'll say, why would it be that a dog would ride with its head out the window, knowing that at any moment it could get something in its eye, which would be irritating for it and uncomfortable for it? And the answer was to the effect that because the joy of the ride greatly outweighs the potential that there might be something that might get in the eye. And even if it does, the joy of the ride is still much greater than that little bit of discomfort. And the concept being that all of you understood the same thing when you decided to explore a dimension of self that can be quite challenging to explore. You knew that the exhilaration that you would find within that exploration was much, much wider and deeper than any of the challenges you would have within that exploration, especially once you had your larger awareness of the exploration that you had undertaken and you were able to view it and integrate it with all of what you are. The appreciation of the experience that you had is actually quite vast. So we'll leave you with that and hope that all of you have a very nice day. Thank you.